Seems to be a lot of discussion around them trying to answer questions in Part 3. Remake, as a trilogy, has done a good job of adding more context to things. It's been adding a lot more layers to the game, which actually is kind of giving us more questions than answering them. Kind of following the same basic structure and path, and they've sort of already hinted that that was going to be the case. It's just all the new elements sort of add new layers to it. So that's been making me wonder about some of the ambiguous questions from the original game, which if Part 3 is going to give us answers, I feel like it's going to be giving us answers to questions that we had in the original game. And there's a lot of those, don't get me wrong, but there's two main ones right now that I sort of want to focus on, one way more than the other. The first one is how the game ends. And I'm talking about the ending with Red 13 and his puppies, and looks over Midgar and the world starting to regrow, and we hear the laugh of children in the live stream. I'm of the camp that this signifies that humanity is gone. They're no more. The director Katase said that too, but then he's kind of said both things, I think, at various points. My interpretation overall of this is, humanity's gone. They've rejoined the live stream. The planet's sort of regrowing. It's in a childlike state again, and the planet's in a process of healing, more or less. And I already hear it. I hear all the keyboards clacking away all across the country. Keyboards clacking, saying, "Eggplant, you're an idiot. Just because Midgar is gone doesn't mean humanity's gone." I mean, we heard kids laughing. They're just right over there. They're right off screen, right there. And I get it. People are living in Coral, they're living in the Gold Saucer and Gungaga. There's other people than in Midgar, sure. So you could make the argument either way, which is why that question is ambiguous. But I'll come back to this one in a little bit. It's not the main one I really want to talk about here. But the second question I've been thinking about, and the main one I'm actually going to probably talk about the most here, is the relationship that Sephiroth and Jenova have, because I think it's changing a little bit. So as we know from the original, Sephiroth is very much influenced by Jenova, and Hojo pretty much tells us that Sephiroth is kind of in control of Jenova. He's controlling what she does, but the goals are Jenova's. So to me, it always seems like there's just a symbiotic relationship going on. Sephiroth died, Jenova gives him a means to return. Jenova's manipulated Sephiroth, making him strongly believe that Jenova is his mother. Gonna really come back to that one in a little bit, but overall he's carrying out Jenova's goals, using her powers as a means to an end, and Jenova's using his powers as a means to an end. So they're just working together in perfect unison. Like, just think of like Venom from Marvel. When it comes to Jenova, they've been giving her way more context to her character. They've been showing us actual flashbacks of Jenova fighting humans and etc. And they tell the story of how she's the faceless one and manipulates the minds and hearts of men and all this good, cool lore building stuff. It's great. The thing is though, there's a very important piece here that the Gi showed us, is that if you're not from this planet, you essentially can't die. You're immortal. You don't go into the live stream. So this tells us that this master manipulator is an immortal. She can't die. So that's why the Cetra had to seal her away. They wanted her to be banished forever. And then obviously Shinra found her. Shinra took her out of the ground. Hojo did some experiments, made all the soldiers, made Sephiroth, so on and so forth. And as we know, people who have Jenova cells can be manipulated and controlled by Jenova and see things. And so when it comes to Jenova manifesting herself in the remake, we see from Sephiroth, he keeps telling Cloud, hey, Jenova can be someone you fear, hate, and love. She can take the face of anyone. And they keep teasing this like Tifa is going to be that person, because usually it's focused around her when that happens. And the weird thing is, we never really see Jenova take the form that someone loves. And what I mean by this is Cloud only ever sees Jenova as Sephiroth, it seems, someone he hates and fears. And then when Jenova and Sephiroth, the symbiotic version of them, takes over a roadman and shows himself to President Rufus, takes the form of Glenn, basically another person that is feared and hated by President Rufus in this case. So it kind of makes you wonder why Sephiroth keeps telling us, hey, she can be someone you love. And I think there's two cases. One hasn't been confirmed yet, but I do think that Cloud has seen someone he loved in this game, and that someone is obviously Aerith. That's not a new thing. A lot of people are starting to think that. The one in the field, I think that is the real Aerith, because Red 13 and other people kind of sense her there. So I don't think that Aerith is the Jenova copy. I do think the one in the Temple of the Ancients, however, is, for kind of three reasons. One's a little shaky, but three's a better number when you have reasons, so I'm gonna go with 3. The first reason is, one, it's right after Jenova Headache, and that's kind of the go-to in this game, is whenever Cloud gets his little Jenova blitz, he's seeing an illusion. Same with Sephiroth, which we find out in the mobile game. So I think he gets the headache, sees Aerith. If you listen to the theme song, it is Aerith's theme, but it's off. The keys, the tones, whatever the musicologist magic terms are, it's off. I mean, you can listen to it.
I'll see you off.
It's just a little bit off, and I think that's by design. I think it's to show us that, hey, this isn't really Aerith that we're looking at here. And the third reason, arguably my most shaky reason, is because Red 13's sitting right there as well, and Red 13 doesn't feel Aerith's presence, where in the field he does. And yeah, this one's kind of weak. He's about COVID distance away from her. But I strongly believe that Cloud did see Jenova as Aerith here, and that's going to create a cool element in the next game, because if we're getting Cloud seeing Aerith, and which is really Jenova, you know, continuing the black materia to resurrect and give it to her and continue doing the reunion, I think it's going to add a cool element, especially if good Aerith is going to be running around telling Cloud stuff as well. It's going to create this, there's a good Aerith and a bad Aerith, what do we do? Sort of like how people are saying there's a good Sephiroth and a bad Sephiroth, which we'll circle back to that idea in a little bit too. So yeah, I think this idea of Jenova showing up as Aerith makes total sense. I think it makes sense that we've already seen it, given that we've been warned Jenova can be someone you love. There's a lot of visual cues that happen when Jenova appears that happened when we saw that Aerith. So I think that's going to be a thing until Cloud eventually, you know, goes into the live stream, has all his memories. We see a lot of the scenes that we actually didn't get to see in Rebirth that we were all expecting to, like Aerith's burial and few other scenes around like the Nibelheim events. When we see all those, that I think that's going to clear up all the Jenova confusion. I think that's also kind of why when you were fighting Sephiroth at the end of the game and he says that won't work on me anymore, Sephiroth laughs at him, because I think he knows it's not true. He knows that Jenova's still in his head. But yeah, I don't really want to talk about the possibility of Cloud seeing Jenova as Aerith now. I wanted to talk about, as I mentioned, Sephiroth and Jenova's relationship. And I do want to preface this now by saying that I do think there are two Sephiroths. That's probably why we see two different key arts with Sephiroth on both of them, because one's more that symbiotic Sephiroth that is very much still with the influence of Jenova, and then the other one is the one we see kind of in Remake, who remakes himself into the Arbiter of Fate and then gives birth to new planets in Rebirth. It's almost like these games might be named after him, but I digress. He's always been obsessed with Jenova being his mother. That's kind of his whole thing. He always calls her mother. He wants to do mother's bidding. He's a good little mama's boy for the most part. The thing is, it's not correct. So I think the main thing here, the relationship part, is that we know from the mobile game, which I hope they really put all these details into the next game, because I think it just adds more color and more flavor and more context and helps us answer some questions like, why did he turn so bad? I don't want a situation where it's like, you gotta pay this gotcha game, but anyway. And what do we know about Sephiroth in the mobile game at this point? Well, we know he's somewhat alone. He's a murderous soldier. Shinra made him to be that way. He doesn't want to be that way. He doesn't want to be seen as a cyborg. He wants to be seen as a person. We also know that he had a locket, and in that locket, there was a picture of Lucrezia. Now, Lucrezia is Sephiroth's real mother, Vincent Valentine's wife, who basically decided she wanted Hojo more for whatever reason. I guess he's packing or something, who knows. Yeah, so Hojo just lies and says, hey, your mother's real name is Jenova, but he still has a locket that has Lucrezia's picture in it. Glenn kicks this into a ravine, so the locket's gone. Obviously that locket was very precious to Sephiroth because it was a picture of his mother, and he wants to be a hero, he wants to be a good guy, and we sort of see that because we see when he kills all of the people on that island that even though he did it, he vastly regrets it, and he confronts the last sole survivor, but he tries to save the guy, and the guy basically says, no, I'd rather die and be with my people in the live stream than live alone. And I think this moment is going to stick with Sephiroth, and I think it's going to give him this twisted idea of people want to be together, and the best way for them to be together is just they can all be together in the live stream, and then we see that Sephiroth gets a Jenova headache after he does a heroic act. So I'm pretty sure Jenova probably just shows up to Sephiroth as Lucrezia, and throughout his life probably constantly tells him, plants that seed, hey, you're special, hey, you're a part of me, maybe lets him know that he is, you know, above everyone, that he is a monster. Maybe he does resist it, because it is an insecurity of his, right? He thinks Shinra is turning him into a monster. But I think from that point, you know, Sephiroth's very insecure. He doesn't want to be alone. He thinks he's a monster. And if Jenova is showing up to him as his mother, Lucrezia, it really is going to double down and drive that point home. And maybe he resists it, but then he reads the books in Shinra Manor that further confirm it. And then he finds all the labs. He finds her body in Nibelheim, which shows all the test tubes and the monsters. Genesis further breaks him, although we didn't see where Genesis showed up yet in the game, and who knows if he's going to show up. But the way they've redone a lot of new elements and made them better, Genesis will probably be better. I've made a lot of stuff around Genesis before. I think he's going to come back, but it always seemed kind of a little weak in my opinion. Not terrible, but like it was just like, oh yeah, Hojo told me my mom was Jenova. I just found Jenova here. Okay, I read all the books. I read the literature. I guess I am a monster. Now I'm going to kill everyone. It all just seemed like a violent turn, like where if he was this calm, composed person that Crisis Core they've sort of shown him to be, it always just felt too quick. A real hero probably shouldn't care about, what's that Mewtwo quote? Circumstances of one birth are irrelevant. It's what you do with the gift of life. Maybe Sephiroth could take some notes from Mewtwo. Yeah, I think basically Jenova has been pestering Sephiroth's brain ever since that first moment we see where he gets that first Jenova headache. I think he sees Lucrezia, and it's not Lucrezia, it's Jenova manipulating him into the reunion, making him think he's going to save humanity in some way. And I think the Sephiroth at the end of time has seen past that and knows it's not true. I think one key important thing here is in the ultimatum or the devs, I'm kind of mixing the two sources together in my head at this point, but they give a line saying Sephiroth's goal is to ensure the life stream, the human race, will last longer. Because we see this Sephiroth at the end of time, Edge of Creation, and he's alone. That Sephiroth at the end of time, at the Edge of Creation, he's the one who gives us the cool quotes about 7 seconds to the end, explains the multiverse and Rebirth, and he looks into the universe and says one day we'll become a part of it. And he's not talking about Jenova here, because whenever he talks about Jenova, he always preferences her with her. So he's saying it, looking into the universe, and he says, I won't end, and I won't have you end, which I think means he wants to basically absorb the life stream into himself for kind of two main reasons. One is so that it can live on forever, and two, that way when he lives to the end of time, he technically won't be alone anymore. And if I become something beyond everything, you know, he doesn't need Jenova to do this, because Jenova just wants to consume and destroy. And Sephiroth doesn't really want to do that. He wants the life stream to live on forever, but within him, he wants to become more or less the planet. He wants to be the harbinger of the life stream, just like how he in Remake remade himself to become the arbiter of fate. He ultimately is trying to resurrect and rebirth himself as the planet in a weird way. He wants to be the hero that harbinges the life stream, and then that way the life stream can live on forever through him, essentially imprisoning us within that beautiful body of his. After all, he keeps saying in this game, death isn't the end, it's a homecoming. And that goal is honestly extremely similar to the goal in the original game, except the only difference here is Jenova's taken out of the equation and it's all Sephiroth all the time. Now, I think Sephiroth, he knows that we've got to get rid of Jenova, but Jenova's immortal. You can't get rid of Jenova, but you can. We find out from the Gi that you can use the black materia to erase something. And I think that's what he wants Cloud to help him do. I think he wants to work with Cloud, one, to get the black materia to destroy Jenova for good, and two, I think he also wants to have Cloud bring all their realities together, because realities are kind of like memories, and Cloud's able to bring memories together into one key thing. It's something I've talked about before. I'm not going to get into the details of it here, but then it would create this odd dichotomy of Sephiroth versus Jenova, who's controlling him. But I think that works good for a mid-boss. You know, you finish off Jenova with Sephiroth, and then you find out, no, he's not really a good guy. He wants us to become part of him and destroy everything. This isn't all good. This is actually still bad. It means the process of life and death won't continue, but I think that's kind of this endgame Sephiroth's new goal, make the planet live on forever inside of him, through him. It'll stop the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, but everything will just be stagnant and living inside of him for all eternity, and he won't be alone anymore because of it. So yeah, kind of messed up. Everyone's stuck in a little Sephiroth prison, and I think part of unraveling this mystery is my first little point I thought about in the beginning, the end of the game, where you see Red 13 and his puppies and humanity is gone, in my opinion. I think Zack is going to encounter this Red 13. And it's not like Zack meeting Red 13 would be too crazy. We actually see in Rebirth, he finds Red 13. He knows Red 13 saves Aerith, so he knows Red 13's not a bad guy. He knows he's a good person. So I think this interaction would just give us a lot more context, and they've already kind of prefaced that Zack is aware who Red 13 is, but he doesn't know anything about him yet. And I think this is going to be kind of an important thing for us, because it's going to answer that question of what really happened, that humans eventually go away with time. It gives us that weird, oh, maybe Sephiroth is saving us, but Aerith's told us he's doing it in the wrong way. We learn he's doing it in the wrong way.
He'd tell you that he only cares about the planet, that he'd do everything in his power to protect and preserve it. But this isn't the way it's supposed to be. There's no greater threat to the planet than him.
So I think what's going to happen is we will defeat Sephiroth, but then we're going to be left with a blank canvas, a new world. What are we going to do, you know? Maybe there's a big bang, 7 seconds until all the universes end. Is Cloud going to be able to bring all the memories of multiple realities together and create a new world where Jenova doesn't exist? I believe in the dev interviews they said they wanted to create a situation where the games could go on beyond the remake. And to me, you could create a similar end scene where you have Red 13 with his puppies, but maybe he looks at a different world where Midgar is radically different, where you see Sephiroth running around with Lucrezia and Vincent, and everything's just completely different now. It's a whole new world. So this remake trilogy sort of follows the original game and then creates this brand new behemoth that they can milk indefinitely and make all kinds of new spin-off games and whatever you want. But yeah, that's sort of where my head's at. So to recap, Jenova's been influencing Sephiroth in the form of Lucrezia. He is essentially trying to use Cloud to help him defeat Jenova for good. This is going to have some downstream effects, but ultimately Sephiroth is going to try to absorb the lifestream into himself. So humanity and the lifestream can live on forever within him. We'll defeat him. This will cause Cloud to have to bring together multiple realities and create a whole new universe. Honestly, a lot of this reminds me of the 2016 Secret Wars comic in Marvel. The universes are all falling apart. Dr. Doom was able to create a world with a lot of the broken realities, and then the world wasn't perfect, it was broken. And I think that's sort of what Sephiroth is. Sephiroth's that God King Doom. It's God King Sephiroth. It's his world, he will be God, and everyone will live under him forever until the good guys show up from an alternate timeline, fix everything, and ultimately they get the power and build a new universe and make it better. And in that story, they give Doom his body back, more or less, where he's not disfigured, even though there's arguments that he never was disfigured, but whatever. But I could see that happening in this. They rebuild a new world, and Sephiroth is a normal kid. He's not alone anymore. He kind of gets that thing everyone wanted. It's a redemption arc, kind of, but we still got bad guy Sephiroth, and now this is a whole new world anyway, you know? Maybe soldiers are completely different, and Cloud's working with Glenn's squad, you know? Whole new world, whole new franchise that can milk. But yeah, that's where my head's at for now on all this. And yeah, as always, poke holes in it, let me know how I'm wrong. And as always, drive fast, take chances. Later, nerds.
We'll be changing more than fate itself. If we succeed, if we win, we'll be changing ourselves. I guess maybe that's why I hesitated.